Hello, how's it going everyone? So this is going to be a controversial video because people talk a lot about what attribution settings you should run inside of Meta. I've been on one side of the equation pretty heavily, and now I'm kind of moving over a little bit more. So we'll jump into that and we'll give you guys both the good and the bad of each and some things to think about whenever you're picking pretty much what type of attribution and how it's going to affect the account. So anyways, whenever you build a sales campaign, right? So anything conversion based, you're going to see the attribution selections over here. So we see the 7-day click through, the 1-day engage view, and then the 1-day view through conversion. Now, most people would choose, at least most marketers that look at incrementality and understand how it impacts their business from ads, would say that the closest correlation to positive results in terms of like, if Meta says that we're doing good, then we're doing good on the back end of the business, is the 7-day click-through window with engage view off and view through off. This is what I've been teaching for years now, it feels like, but for about a year now. And it's been a very consistent pattern that I've seen inside of the algorithm where 7 days is the best way to go, not 1 day, but 7 days, and obviously taking these off. The reason why is because the data is going to be more accurate than that of adding in any of these other ones. So an example of that, right? Meta doesn't really know if you've seen an ad or not. It can only assume when you've seen an ad based on the time frame of when you go from point A to point B, and the tracking is not necessarily the best. And so whenever you go through a click, the FCLID or the tag can easily connect to you and follow you through the process. Now, some people have ad blockers. We can obviously go over that in another video. That's a whole nother side of issues when it comes to privacy and all that with tracking, but we have a solution for that. But anyways, assuming that we just don't have that big of an issue on that side of the equation, 7-day click is fairly accurate in terms of how it tracks conversions. Now, the biggest thing that has shifted from the previous builds in marketing to now the current builds in marketing is that with the Andromeda update, the full funnel is being built out within Meta a lot more cleanly, right? So we're not looking at scenarios where you have to build out 3 different layers of campaigns like I've talked about in a previous video, where you have your top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel audiences. It's way more built within one ad set and one campaign and geared towards the creatives, as you guys know if you watch my previous video. And so what that means is that the algorithm can better understand a user's buying pattern the more data you feed it. So what I've been pushing for now in accounts, and what I've seen better results on in accounts now, and this is also on the CProGrowth YouTube channel too, so if you want to see case studies and evidence of all this, you can go check it out. But the view through conversions are actually now what I like to put on the 1 day. I leave engage video view off, which I'll talk a little about that in a little bit. But now I'm doing 7-day click through and 1-day view through. And the reason why I'm doing that is because it allows the algorithm to better see what interactions are happening based on how the funnel is being laid out inside of the one ad set. So just on click, we weren't seeing like engaged views. We weren't really seeing the bottom of funnel ads that weren't really impacting, but maybe caused the search to happen versus an ad click. And as we know, not everyone is clicking on ads. People look at ads and then they'll Google the brand name. So we were not really seeing as much of the bottom of funnel going on with this off, or at least Andromeda, the Meta algorithm doesn't see it as well with it off. Now, the biggest concern that I have with this, and also this is a demo account, just so you guys know, the reason why I'm a little bit concerned about this is, or why I would be a little bit concerned about the view through being on, is that sometimes Meta, and this depends on your business, if you have a really high LTV, it might over prioritize the bottom of funnel versus the top of funnel. And that's just because you're optimizing towards, like I said, 1-day view throughs. So people that tend to convert within 1 day from what Meta sees tends to be warm traffic bottom of funnel. So if you have a really high LTV, be careful of this. There's still an argument to have this off, but it's one of those things to where if you're pumping in, and this is like I said in another video, but if you're pumping in new customers only via CAPI imports, then view through makes a lot more sense because you want to see more you want the algorithm to see more of the funnel, and you're feeding it more first click data past the 7-day window if you have a longer buying cycle. So like I said, it's very much scenario based. So I'll give you guys specific actionable examples on what I would do in the scenario. So I'm going to assume, let's say that you do not have CAPI imports and you're just using the standard Facebook, conversion action, and that's what majority of people are doing inside of their accounts. And so in that scenario, if you're doing that and you have a low spend, so you hardly have any data in the account, you're looking at like under 20 conversions, under 50 conversions a month, then I would leave on view through conversions for it to see more of what's going on and to feed it more data. Now, if you are a business that does not have CAPI imports and you do not have a really, really high LTV, then I would also say that click through on 7 days and view through on 1 day also makes a lot of sense, because you're not worried about the bottom of funnel being over prioritized, because you're just having, one-off purchasers kind of thing. Like your LTV is under like 10% of the AOV, right? Like it's non-existent, which is another problem. But in some cases, if you have a really high AOV, it makes a lot of sense for your business. Obviously, it's all business model based. So if you are someone that has a really strong LTV, like most brands do, or most brands that are scaling do, where you have at least 30% of the AOV or higher that's geared towards your return customers, then I would most likely turn this off if I don't have CAPI imports. And the reason why is because we don't want to over prioritize or let the algorithm push too much into repeat traffic, and then you're in a scenario where the algorithm's prioritizing bottom of funnel versus top of funnel, so you're not prospecting, you're just consuming. The account looks better, but you're not able to scale, and the back end metrics of your business don't look as good, and you're at a wall. So that's where I would say that it makes sense to still do the click through. However, like I was saying earlier, if you have CAPI imports on first click, we're finding that 7-day click-throughs and 1-day view-throughs, if you're an account that is somewhat seasoned, right, at least 15 conversions, makes a lot of sense to do this. And it's one of those scenarios where I also typically never run engaged views for video only, just because I don't necessarily see this being as impactful as the view-through. Because we're essentially segmenting out data now, and it gets a little bit more confusing. I do want to do more experiments with pushing this on. However, it's not necessarily something that I would recommend yet. So I'll let you guys know when we have more data on that, but this has been sort of the new findings that we're pushing for, because I know that a lot of people just push 7 days. I used to, and it does make a lot of sense for accurate data. However, Andromeda has changed everything. And so we're having to kind of relearn what were the standard SOPs in the digital marketing space. So with all that being said, keep in mind, every business is different. If you ever are in a scenario where like, hey, we have the time or the ability to test both, go for it. The only issue I will say is that if you run them at the same time, Meta will dedupe users. So people that are in one ad set with the same event, they will not carry over to the other ad set with the same event, right? So Meta will do its best to dedupe it to keep them in their own funnels, unless you have totally different creative in each one. So just keep that in mind whenever you're doing this. Be on the lookout, because sometimes view through might shoot through the roof on your attribution whenever you see whenever you segment it out. So keep in mind that if you see view through spike like crazy, then it's probably over prioritizing the bottom of funnel, and you might need to look at, especially if you have a longer buying window than 7 days, you will need to look at CAPI imports as a possible solution, because the algorithm's not going to be able to see the first click, is really what it comes down to. So if you want to learn more about that, pretty much you can just comment below and then I'll answer, and then we'll kind of go from there. But yeah, that's the quick update on what I've seen inside of the attribution selection side of Meta for large and small accounts. If you guys want to have more hands-on, in-depth, kind of like hand-holding through the process, we service Meta ads and Google ads for businesses. And then if you're looking for just a community of people that is going through all these tests and we can kind of share information back and forth, we have a school group as well with over 130 marketers that are in there. It's a paid group, but like I said, we have Q&A and everything, community roasts on accounts, all that fun stuff. So anyways, thanks again, and I will see you guys in the next video.